Hi there, it's Ron McCracken. I wanted to make a short video. Hopefully this is going to be short. It's kind of spur of the moment about PTSD and managing triggers. Just a few minutes ago, most of you can probably guess I'm a big fan of YouTube as a whole. Not everything on it, of course. And I was just looking at my YouTube feed, and of course some news coverage of the war in Ukraine came up, and some pretty gruesome stuff, pretty horrible stuff. Russian soldiers are clearly committing war crimes, let's just call it what it is, crimes against humanity, pure evil in Ukraine. So just watching that, this wasn't the first time that this kind of triggered me a little bit. Nothing severe, but one of the keys to managing PTSD and triggers is nipping it in the bud. And something that I've decided to do after that is I'm just not going to watch any more news coverage about the war in Ukraine. I might see some unintentionally, or of course see headlines or whatever, but I'm not going to watch any more video about that war. And that's just being mindful of myself. There's not any one variety of PTSD, of course. Everyone has their own set of triggers and their own limits of what they can take. And it's just something that, and I've talked about this with my therapist. One of the key things is when you're watching something like that, or reading, or even reading about horrible stuff like that, number one question is, if it's disturbing you, number one question is there anything I can do about it? Pretty much nothing. I mean, well, if I had money. I don't have money, but if I did, I could donate a small amount of money to the Red Cross or just whatever, or any number of Ukrainian relief organizations. But there's a whole lot of nothing I can do about it. Therefore, there's really not good reason for me to watch it. It's too upsetting. And I'm just throwing it out there for other people to ponder and think about regarding their own mental health, protecting their own mental health. That old phrase, that old news phrase about if it bleeds, it leads, something like that. As far as the top news stories are almost always the worst ones, the worst violence, and everything. And I mean, that's kind of it. We see journalists making careers out of war coverage, and personally, I think it's obvious the networks all the news networks were cheering for this war to come anyway. So they got what they wanted, and they're pretty gleeful about reporting it. Oh, might be a cynical take on my part, but that's the news networks have shown their history on that. They really love their war reporting. I don't. And certainly that stuff, it needs to be publicized, the world needs to know, and all that stuff. But I'm just talking about on a personal level, if you're dealing with any mental health conditions like PTSD or any others that might be triggered by watching or even reading about war coverage, and myself, it's really best to just avoid it. And of course, it doesn't mean that you don't care. It doesn't mean that you don't care, and it doesn't mean that you are ill-informed or anything like that. What it means is you practicing self-care and understanding yourself and what your triggers are and limiting them as much as you can. This isn't a toughness test. It's once you recognize those things, you have to avoid them whenever you can, within reason. But that's about it. I just wanted to share that. It just was fresh on my mind, and I wanted to make this little video spur of the moment. All right, and whether it's war in Ukraine, possibly triggering PTSD or anything else triggering it, or if you're having difficulty with any other mental health conditions, please reach out for help. A couple resources that I like to share. One is the NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, that's NAMI, crisis text line, and that's the crisis text line is 741-741, and there's always Suicide and Crisis Center. Speaking of, I think it's in July, they're supposed to unveil 988, which is a mental health emergency phone number. Instead of 911, 988 will be reserved for mental health emergencies. And then there's ok2talk.org. That's ok2, the number 2. OK, all capital letters. OK, the number 2, TALK.org. And then another resource is reachouthere.com, and that's all one word. Reach out here, all one word, lowercase, .com. And also, if you Google National Alliance on Mental Illness, our website comes up, and there's lots of resources on there. Some of these same phone numbers and everything. So take care of yourselves. Be mindful of your mental health. And that's about it. Remember, we are luminous beings.